Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm Jason from jb.watchmods. I hope you've all been doing well. Now today we're building a Royal Oak style VK63 chronograph Meca-Quartz watch. So stick around and see how this one turns out. So we're going to be using this lovely deep blue waffle chronograph dial. Now this dial's got 3 sub-dials in a champagne colour and a date window between 4 and 5 o'clock. This is a lovely dial. I can't get over how much texture has been packed into this dial. And that champagne colour really pops against the dark blue. I'm just really loving how this is looking already. So we're using a 42mm stainless steel case. Now this one's got screw down pushers and a screw down crown. It's also got a sapphire crystal, and in the back we've got screws in place to hold the case back down. It's quite a thin case, coming in at 12mm. It's got nice polished edges and it's just a really sporty looking case. I think this watch is going to look awesome. Now bracelet is that classic Royal Oak bracelet. I just love the way this bracelet plays with the light. The way the links articulate just looks unreal. The bracelet's also got this nice butterfly clasp, which is integrated to the bracelet, so it gives you a nice clean overall look. Now a handset, we're going to be using just the standard AP style Royal Oak handset. I love the way the angled hour and minute hand reflect the angles on the case. Just a perfect match. Now movement, we're using a VK63 Meca-Quartz movement. Now this movement is a chronograph, so you've got a stopwatch function and you've got 3 sub-dials as well. So your sub-dial at 6 o'clock is your running second hands, the sub-dial at 3 o'clock is a 24-hour counter, and your sub-dial at 9 o'clock is a 12-hour counter. Now this movement is battery powered as well, so kind of a set and forget deal. And you've got that date function thrown in there as well. So the first thing you're going to notice when you pick up your VK63 movement is that it doesn't come with a dummy crown stem like an NH35 does. It does come with your new crown stem though, so what we're going to do is pull the crown out of our case and screw that into our crown stem. That way we can use that to operate the movement. So at this stage, I'm not worried about the length of the crown stem. I'm just putting it in there so we can purely operate the movement while we're setting the hands. So now that we have that in there, we can get ready and fit our dial. Now this dial only has 2 feet on the back. It was made specifically for that VK63 movement, so no feet to worry about cutting off. So the dial mounts the same way as any other NH35 and NH36. There's 2 small holes on that grey movement spacer, and the feet just locate into those holes nice and tightly. So now, as this is a quartz-based movement, we'll go ahead and we'll fit that battery, so that when we fit the handset, we can test them and make sure everything's running correctly. So it's fairly simple to install the battery. There's a small metal latch that connects into the case. You just need to use your screwdriver, unclip that metal latch, and your battery will slide in there nice and easily. Once you've got your battery installed, just hook that metal latch back down and that'll hold your battery in nice and firmly. So now that our movement's fully operational, we need to get the movement to 12 AM. Now the way that we do that is wind the movement over until the date clicks over. That way you know you're at midnight on the movement, so you can set your hands accordingly. So first up is our hour hand. Now, as we're at 12 AM on the midnight, obviously we want to set our hour hand pointing directly at the 12 o'clock marker. So to do this, I use a little bit of Rotico and stick the hand in the end of the Rotico. This just helps me to hold the hand without marking it in any way. Then I can use my hand press tool and just seat that hand nice and firmly onto the movement. You also just want to double check that your hand is sitting nice and square on the movement and that it's not kinked over at any angles. So once you're happy with how your hour hand's sitting, we can go ahead and get ready to fit our minute hand. Now same deal here, just sticking the minute hand into the end of the Rotico. And I find this is a better method than using tweezers, as your tweezers can sometimes mark the end of the hands or leave little scratches. Your Rotico is not going to leave any marks or any scratches. So it's important to take your time at this step. Just make sure it's lined up directly over 12 o'clock so you don't have any alignment issues. Now once you've got that hand pressed on, super important just to check your clearances, making sure that your hour hand clears your minute hand clears all the indices, and nothing's fouling on each other. At this stage, I also like to wind the movement over. I turn it over twice until the date flicks, just so that we know that the date's flicking in the right location. So the date wheel's just about to flick over here. And you can see on this one, it flicks about 10 minutes prior to 12 o'clock, which is totally acceptable for the VK63 movement. Anywhere 15 minutes either side of 12 AM is perfectly normal. So now we're going to do our seconds hand. Now in this movement, it's a small seconds hand, which is at the 6 o'clock sub dial. So with the seconds hand, you can press it on in any position, doesn't really matter. Just as long as you press it on nice and firmly and level. So with that second hand pressed on now, we should be able to push the crown in and see that second hand start working. Which it does, so that means the second hand's been pressed on correctly. Now we'll just double check our clearances and make sure that our hour hand doesn't foul on that second hand. So there is not a lot of clearance there, as you can imagine, but as long as we are clearing and not fouling on each other, we can move on and start pressing the hands on for our chronograph. So what I'm going to do now is just wind the movement over and get it back to 12 AM. Now the reason for this is the subdial at 3 o'clock is a 24-hour counter. So I need it at 12 AM so I can set that 3 o'clock subdial at 12 o'clock and know it's in the correct position. So I'm also going to reset the chronograph function just so I know it's at the home position. Now to do this, I'm just going to start the chronograph, stop it, and then reset it by using a screwdriver and pushing in on the chronograph levers. This way I can set my large second hand and my 9 o'clock subdial hand at 12 o'clock and know they're in the correct position. So now we'll do our large seconds hand. Now this second hand only operates when you push in the top chronograph lever, and it's used as a stopwatch function. So just take your time and make sure you get it lined up dead on at 12 o'clock, because this hand will snap back to 12 o'clock every time you reset the chronograph. Once you've got it pressed on again, check your clearances. So important, every step of the way, just check your clearances. Just make sure that that second hand isn't going to fail on your minute hand. Now I'll go ahead and fit my 9 o'clock subdial hand. Now this one's the 12-hour counter for the chronograph. Now I know the movement's in the correct position, so I can go ahead and just fit that on facing 12 o'clock on that subdial. Again, just taking your time to make sure it's lined up directly at 12 o'clock. And lastly, I'll do the 24-hour counter, which is the subdial at 3 o'clock. So I know we're at the home position, so I'll set the hand facing 12 o'clock on that subdial. Now this subdial isn't a part of the chronograph function, it's just a 24-hour counter of the watch itself. So it's good for using it as an AM/PM indicator. So once you get all your hands on, check the clearances, make sure everything clears, nothing fouls on each other. And then what we're going to do is go ahead and test our chronograph feature. So we'll get our screwdriver, push down on that top lever of the chronograph pusher, and make sure that that large second hand turns over. Which it does, so now we know that that has been pressed on correctly and our chronograph is working as it should so far. But to really test it, we'll need to leave that chronograph run for a period of time, say half an hour, but I'll do that once the watch is fully assembled. So now we'll stop the chronograph and hit the reset pusher to make sure that that second hand snaps back to 12 o'clock, which it does perfectly. So now that we're happy that our hands are all good, we can go ahead and clean our crystal on our case and get ready to pair the two together. So to do this, we use our trusty air blower, trusty lens pen, just blowing all the dust, all the debris out of the case, and also making sure that your lens pen is clean. I like to blow the dust off my lens pen every time I use it, just to make sure that I'm working with a nice clean surface. So just be really thorough, because the last thing you want is any dust or any hair under that crystal when your watch is assembled. So now that I'm happy that the crystal on the case is nice and clean, I can get ready to fit the movement to the case. Now to do this, we need to pull out our crown stem. So there's a small lever on the back of the movement that needs to be depressed in order to pull that crown out. So this case requires the use of a movement spacer, which is that white bit of plastic you see I'm holding now. So basically that little tang sticking out from the bottom left hand side is where your battery goes, and it's got 3 cutouts on the opposite side for your chronograph pushers. So you just pop your movement into that spacer, basically as simple as that. If you don't put that spacer on, your dial and your movement's going to flop around really loosely in that case and it won't work at all. So you'll definitely know if you need a movement spacer or not. But generally, if you do need a spacer, the case will come with it. Now I like to make sure that the pushers are screwed in. so you can fit the dial and the movement into the case without any obstructions. Sometimes you can accidentally hold a pusher down while you're trying to fit the movement, and it can make it really difficult to fit without you knowing it. So we'll flip it over, make sure that that movement is seated in there nice and flush, making sure everything looks good in the back, and then we can take a look and see how this puppy looks. And it is looking awesome, but I noticed that it's just a little bit rotated off, so I'll flip it back over, get my screwdriver and just try to line it up correctly. Now the way I line it up is by lining up the crown hole in the movement with the crown tube in the case. And this watch is looking amazing. That blue with the stainless steel just looks unreal. Such a sporty looking watch. A real classic. So now that I'm happy that everything looks good, everything's clean in the crystal, no dust in the case, I can get the crown and get ready to cut it to the right length. So seeing as the crown's already fitted to the stem, first thing I'll do is do a trial fit to see where we're at and see how much we need to cut off. Now it looks like we're probably 5, 6, 7 mil too long. So as a reference, I'll start off by cutting about 5 mil off the stem, and then we can test fit it again and go from there. So we push down that little lever on the back of the movement, which releases the crown stem. Then we can remove the crown and cut the stem to our estimated length. So once we've got it cut, we'll screw the crown back on and we'll do another test fit and see how it's looking. So with the crown screwed back down, you can still see it's about 1 millimeter too long. There's just a small gap between the crown and the case. So I'll take it back out, trim about 1 mil off, and we'll try again. I just noticed a bit of a sharp edge on the crown stem, so I'll just get my file and just file it off, just so we don't do any damage to the threads on the crown. So I'm feeling pretty confident with the length, so I'm going to Loctite it up without testing it and see how we go. If it's too long, I can always take it back out and recut it. But this will just save me the extra step of taking it back out to Loctite it again. Just be sure as well to wipe any excess Loctite off your threads. So when you're testing the fitment of your crown, you want to make sure it screws down all the way flush to the case, and you also want to make sure that you can pull the crown out to all positions to make sure that you can change the time and set the date as well. Now that's looking spot on, so I don't need to pull it back out because I've already thread locked it. So now I can go ahead and get ready to fit this case back. So this one's got a gasket that sits on the case back itself. So I'll take that gasket off and just lubricate it just before I put it all together. I'll just use some silicone grease just to lubricate that gasket and help the watch keep its water resistance rating. So once that gasket's lubricated, I'll pop it back onto the case back. Now just double check when you're doing this. Some cases have a groove in the back of the case where the gasket sits, and others, the gasket will sit on the case back. So once that case back's fitted nicely into the case, I can get the screws out and start screwing down this case back. Now these screws are very small and quite fiddly, so it took me a bit of stuffing around to get these screws into place. But once I got the screws down into place, I started running them down evenly in a star-shaped pattern, just so that case back goes down nice and evenly. Once I had all the screws tightened down, I just went around to each one and just double checked that they're all tight. Now it is looking awesome and we are almost there, the final step on the home stretch. So we can get our bracelet and get ready to fit this bracelet to the case. Now it's quite easy. Basically you've got 4 screws, one for each link on the bracelet. So we pop the bracelet into the case, line up the 2 holes and pop our screw in and we can screw it down. And just repeat that process. Now I love the way that the light plays on this bracelet. It looks unreal. Now finally we can see how this thing looks. That is going to do it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think about today's build? I think if that's not the sportiest watch I've built, I don't know what is, honestly. If you've liked the video, hit that like button, hit subscribe to stay updated. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of the Meca-Quartz movement as well. Personally, I think they're a must-have in the collection. Until next time, catch you later.